Hello, everyone, and welcome all of you to Cleaver Magazine's issue number 49 contributors reading. We're so happy to have all of you here. My name is Karen Ryle, and I'm the co-founding editor and chief editor of Cleaver. In 2025, we mark our 12th year as a magazine in this world. We published our first full issue in March 2013. For those of you not familiar with Cleaver, we are a quarterly literary magazine. We publish fresh fiction, poetry, creative nonfiction, and flash every March, June, September, and December. We also publish book reviews, craft essays, and interviews, and a weekly newsletter where we send out writing tips by our contributors, staff, and community of readers. It's a popular feature, so check it out and consider writing a tip. In addition, we host a workshop and masterclass series, which I hope you will check out. Next Sunday afternoon, May 4th at 2 p.m. Eastern, we'll be holding our community Ass in Chair session, a cheeky monthly communal 90-minute commitment to your writing practice, just $5 a session or $15 for four. On Sunday, May 18th, I'll be leading a community movement class called Embodied Resistance, which is also $5 to participate in. On the 25th, Trisha Park will be leading a workshop called Writing Fiction from Life, Finding Your Story Through Spoken Words. You can find all of these events on our classes page on the website, cleavermagazine.com/classes. About our name, cleave is a Janus word, also known as an autoantonym, meaning both itself and its opposite. To cleave is both to stick tight and to fall away. A cleaver is the most broad-edged and brutally efficient kitchen knife designed to be swung like a hammer for the most effective channel of force. Cleave also means to come together with strong attachment. Cleaver runs its literary magazine on 100% volunteer labor with many fine editors whose invaluable contributions make our magazine possible. Speaking of issues, I am tremendously proud of issue 49 with its sparkling collection of talented writers. Among them, we feature some of the semifinalists from our Duality Creative Nonfiction Contest. Thanks to all of you for your enthusiasm and support and for trusting us as stewards of your work. So we will start with Bradley J. Fest. So Bradley J. Fest is Associate Professor of English and the 2022 Cora A. Babcock Chair in English at Hartwick College, where he has taught courses in creative writing, poetry and poetics, digital studies, and 20th and 21st century United States literature since 2017. He is the author of 2 volumes of poetry, The Rocking Chair and The Shape of Things, and 2013 to 2017 Sonnets, the first volume in his ongoing sonnet sequence, which was published by LJMCD Communications in July 2024. He also has written a number of essays on contemporary literature and culture, which have been published in Boundary 2, Countertext, Critique, Genre, Scale in Literature and Culture, and elsewhere. More information is available at bradleyjfest.com. Welcome, Bradley.
So tonight I'm going to be reading just one poem from you, a sonnet titled 2023-32, which was published in issue 48 of Cleaver. This poem comes from an ongoing experimental American sonnet sequence that I've been writing now for over a decade. The first volume, 2013 to 2017 Sonnets, as Karen said, was just published this past July by LJMCD Communications. The second volume, 2018 to 2024 Sonnets, is the book from which this poem comes from tonight, and it's currently seeking a publisher, that book, and I'm now working on a third volume. 2023-32. Soaring amaranthus, getting you down on the floor again? Diane Seuss's long line will set things right, while hazarding the new kinds of loneliness. The body that is your body is and always has been somebody else's body once. The ways that lead to dancing, birth and decay. The glitter mob death's heads swarming beyond the fundament of your second best chance at immortality. These were the days to accidentally misplace our hit list in the abattoir's back rooms. All that glory, days of breakbeat jubilation at being a human on the angel's shoulder facing the opposite direction. You know, away from the nightmare of history and its hypercapitals and desertifications and wars. So the lines are too long, truly. They require an endurance that can't even bother pretending it didn't volta here just because it needed to, had to, must without any doubt from above or below change. Did the layout too, the product more than just words. Yea, become what it is. I despair its architecture, its too easy evidence of temporal failures and non-appearance. But then I'll just turn and keep going. The moments and the ones after them turn not beyond, but about the grain we'd so ardently brushed against once. Or double back and finish the first thought, looking at something different, being able to see it, imagine it, hope for it, bring it forth into our light.
Okay, next up is Jeff Friedman. Jeff's 11th book, Broken Signals, was published by Bamboo Dart Press in August 2024. Friedman's poems and mini-stories have appeared in American Poetry Review, Poetry, Poetry International, New England Review, Dreaming Awake, New Contemporary Prose Poetry from the United States, Australia, and the United Kingdom, Fiction International, Smoke Long Quarterly, Flash Fiction Funny, Flash Nonfiction Funny, Contemporary Surrealist and Magical Realist Anthology, 101 Jewish Poems for the Third Millennium. He's been 5 times in Best Microfiction and in the New Republic. He has received the NEA Literature Translation Fellowship and numerous other awards. Welcome back, Jeff. It's so great to have you again.
I'm reading 3 micros, and they're in the tale fable category. I'll start out with the first one. Our Daughter's Glow. Our daughter Willow glows in the dark, not a pale glow either, enough to read a book by. Her light is gold, soothing. When she goes to the bathroom at night, she doesn't need to turn the light on to see herself clearly in the mirror. We need to do something about this, my wife Callista says repeatedly. But what, I wonder? She's a great kid, I answer, and she's not hurting anyone. Callista counters, she might be hurting herself, putting too much stress on her small body to generate light. But Willow is a blur of motion during the day. Mom, she says, almost purring, I'm all warm inside. At night, my wife covers her with blankets to dim her bedroom. I kiss her forehead. When we take her to the pediatrician, he says she drank too much milk in her early years, a stethoscope around his neck. He prescribes a dark soda for her to drink 2 times a day. She burps a lot, but her glow remains. A therapist gives her hypnotherapy and directs her to concentrate on her shadow. Let your glow sink into darkness, he says firmly. Her shadow disappears, but not the glow. Our local healer thinks Willow may have swallowed a swarm of fireflies in a dream. Nothing to be done, she says, but wait for her to forget the dream. I don't remember swallowing any fireflies in a dream, our daughter answers, or even dreaming about fireflies. She'll grow out of it, I tell my wife. What if she doesn't, she asks. Who will want to date a girl who glows in the dark? But everyone in her class loves our daughter, and at slumber parties, the other girls cuddle up to her body, basking in her glow. The second piece is sort of the opposite, living with my monster. My monster comes home each night with blood on her lips and teeth. My monster has violent dark eyes and long silky hair, a body with killer curves. She has a face that turns men into blubbering boys or makes them languish, pining for her. The others she simply kills and devours the flesh. My monster is all mine. She looks into my eyes and finds pools in which flowers wilt and dies. She looks into my eyes and sees the mirror of herself and turns to stone. She turns to stone over and over again, but I loosen her to flesh and blood. I make her a lover. We make love like spiders, ready to bite each other's heads off. It's a strange dance over the sticky lines, coming too close, pulling apart. My monster flashes her teeth at me and rises up, slashing the air with her talons. She loves me more than she loves herself, but still, she wants to kill me. Oh, this is so morbid. Wow. I didn't even realize. I'm going to change all that after the reading. Curse. The alligator lay across my path in the woods. I couldn't tell if it was actually sleeping are pretending to sleep, so it might tempt me to come close enough to attack. Once they get moving, I had heard they're fast as hell, and I wouldn't be able to outrun it. I edged forward. Its thorny tail twitched as though it had a life of its own. Its eyes opened, aiming their gaze at me. Don't be afraid, the alligator said. I'm a man who has been cursed, and now I live inside an alligator. I kept my distance, looking around for a branch or stick that I could use to fend him off should he charge. He squared up to face me on the path. I'm not a man, I said. I'm an alligator who has been cursed. I live inside the body of a man. He opened his pointed snout as if ready to attack, and I opened mine deep inside me. Thank you. It'll change the tone a little bit. Called Newman's Own. I was a big fan of Paul Newman, and when I was growing up, so I thought I'd write a poem about him. My lover thought I was Paul Newman, which is probably why she became my lover. One night in bed, I told her the truth. I'm not Paul Newman. She started to laugh. You're a joker, all right, she said. No, really. Paul Newman has blue eyes that are clear as skies. I've got dark, beady brown eyes, Hungarian eyes. He has a square jaw, and I have a weak chin, partially hidden by a scraggly beard. I've never made love to Liz Taylor, Dominique Sanda, or Joanna Woodward. And I don't drink 2 6-packs in 2 months, let alone 2 hours. Well, she said, your tomato sauce is pretty good.
Next up is Rachel Talbot. Rachel Talbot is a graduate of the MFA program at Stony Brook University. Her short fiction has been published in the Southern Humanities Review, and her flash fiction has been published in Action Spectacle. Her short story, Wild Animals of Las Vegas, was nominated for a Penn Robert J. Dow Short Story Prize for Emerging Writers. Welcome, Rachel.
So I'm going to read one flash story. It's called So Far in the Distance. A box turtle hits the cold fireplace at dawn. The rousing smack on the hearth calls Glenda from bed. No easy feat, tentative morning legs needing time to feel solid. Her knee cracks as if broken in two, but it's old limbs awakening to another day of discomfort. The shell resembles a child's combat helmet, domed and worn with pride in some backyard battle. The surface is the black of a stagnant pond with an abstract pattern of butter yellow lines like spilled bones. Out of one end, a neck and head emerge, no bigger than a thumb with eyes. Upon recognizing each other's living presence, Glenda's heart lurches and the turtle's head vanishes into her shell. A mourning dove's call breaks the silence, insistent and longing. A draft rouses Glenda's cotton nightdress, tickling her veiny calves. It could have been an hour. It could have been a few minutes. The turtle extends her head again. Her irises are a warm ebony brown set inside the wrinkled bowl of her eye socket. Her throat pulses. Her saggy legs descend, each ending in a fringe of blunt claws. Had the damper been left open? Even so, how could a turtle have climbed the roof and into the chimney? A ray of morning sun catches a dull red mark on the turtle's shell. Then Glenda remembers. Ben was 6 when he and his dad, Harry, found a turtle near the woodshed. I wanted to keep it, Ben said at dinner. Harry sliced his pork chop. A house is no place for a turtle. So we marked it with paint. When we find it, I'll know it's mine, Ben said. Turtles can live a mighty long time. Harry chewed like a lion. That turtle will be out there mucking around long after me and your mom are 6 feet under. What do you mean? Ben asked. That turtle will outlive the two of us. So when you're a grown man and you see your handsome turtle, say hello for us. Harry chuckled. Ben spoke to his plate. A ripe teardrop spilled onto his flawless cheek. I don't want you and Daddy to die. Glenda was quick to speak. That's a long time from now. So far in the distance, it's a waste of time to spend a second longer thinking about it. You have much more important things to think about, Harry added, like your arithmetic and your letters. All that turtle will be doing is eating bugs and flattening the grass. Ben spoke as if in a trance. You won't be alive. Glenda could see it. the new awareness spreading to every part of her son's body, changing each cell as it passed through him. Now, Glenda bends to touch the dried paint on the turtle's shell, aching not in her bones, but in some place far deeper. The turtle watches Glenda with two unblinking eyes, and Glenda watches back, woman and turtle trapped in each other's lonely gaze. Glenda lowers herself to the ground and crawls forward so she can see up the chimney at the postage stamp patch of morning light sky at the long ago place from which the turtle has traveled. The turtle belongs in the empty house after all, she thinks. And perhaps it is I who belong outside, feeding on bugs, flattening the grass with my own ancient body, clear-headed and unencumbered by any awareness at all.
Awesome. So next up is Adam Doniger. He, him is a poet and plant scientist based in Ithaca, New York. When not at the lab wondering what tomatoes dream, he is at home cuddling with his cat, Wallace. Welcome, Adam.
So this poem is a conversation about plants. Negative botany, I almost wept. Plants do not actually sleep, nor do they lie or even bluff. They do, however, expose their genitalia. And Carson. I climbed the tallest mountain in New York in the middle of summer to find refugial alpine plants. Pansies for thoughts, a sick rose, remembrance for rosemary. To their flowers, I took my hand lens, and to my surprise, I could not find a vagina, nor a penis, nor sperm. Death I remember, glossy purple clots, and shadows numberless. Nor metaphor. I could only whisper what I saw. When people read erotic symbols into my paintings, they are really talking of their own affairs. Georgia O'Keeffe. I almost wept. But I'm learning to shout. For example, here, the genres of aerial roots, stolons, runners, prop roots, stranglers, ostoria, parasitic insertions, knees, snorkels.
Jocelyn Jane Cox's work has appeared in the Colorado Review, the Offing Had, or HAD, Roy Faintant Literary Press, Penn Review, and Roanoke Review. She received her MFA in creative writing from Sarah Lawrence College, and her fiction has been nominated for a Pushcart Prize. Her memoir, Motion Dazzle, about losing her mother on her son's first birthday, will be released by Vine Leaves Press in September 2025. She lives in the Hudson Valley of New York and can be found on Instagram at Jocelyn Jane Cox Writer and at jocelynjanecox.bluesky social. But anyway, Jocelyn was my student many, many years ago when I first started teaching creative writing at Penn. And it's so cool. I just remember how like smart and like I remember her very well and talented she was. And so cool to have her back in my life and also her memoirs coming out. So welcome, Jocelyn. So great to have you here.
My story takes place in Philadelphia when I was in college at University of Pennsylvania, where I took a few classes with Karen Ryle. And the title will take me almost as long to read as the piece itself. It's a very long title. The title is To the Driver of the Gray Sedan Who Hit Me on My Bike at the Corner of Walnut and 37th. I'm writing to let you know that was me in the green helmet traveling east on Walnut at the corner of 37th Street around 1:30 p.m. on a Tuesday afternoon in the spring of 1995. I was coasting slowly downhill on the sidewalk with my brakes on. I usually rode on the sidewalk because I was so nervous about getting hit by a car. My bike was a Specialized brand Hard Rock, silver with bold green lettering. I'd saved up and was finally able to purchase it to shorten the commute to classes from the row house where I lived with a few fellow students, several blocks west of campus. It was a mountain bike. Not that I intended to ever go mountain biking, but also I wasn't yet crossing it off the list of possibilities. Hey, it could have happened if I'd become a completely different person. And also, if you hadn't rolled right through that stop sign. Mostly, I liked those plump tires and how they absorbed the bumps of city streets or sidewalks. I enjoyed saying the word hard rock in a deep voice and with some bravado, as in, I'll meet you there on my hard rock, or just let me lock up my hard rock. This was the opposite of my persona, aspirational. At the moment, I was on my way to meet with one of my English professors to discuss the scope and content of my senior thesis. It was going to be a groundbreaking tome entitled Female Adornment in 20th Century Utopian and Dystopian Literature. So it was about fashion. And no, not frivolous in the slightest. I was excited to talk about my findings in my primary texts, some of which, Herland, Woman on the Edge of Time, Handmaid's Tale, were tucked into my backpack. I was a burgeoning feminist, a baby feminist, almost a feminist, maybe a feminist one day. I didn't have a full grasp of feminism quite yet, but I wanted to. I realized that a few years have passed, but I wanted to ask you a few questions. First, did you hear the crunch of my bike frame or the crack of my knuckles against the passenger side of your car? Did you have somewhere you really needed to be? Because I noticed that you kept going. Several onlookers took note of this as well, a few of whom started running after you up Walnut while others rushed to my side on the street. I was fine for the most part, except for my hands, which would swell and bruise and ache for a while, but weren't broken or sprained. Those big tires bounced off the metal pretty nicely and probably saved me from further injury. My sturdy hard rock, unfortunately, wasn't fine. The front tire frame was crumpled and folded to the left. After I collected myself and the crowd dispersed, I rolled it awkwardly beside me the 2 final blocks toward my professor's office. I locked it to the rack and took some deep breaths as I entered the building. I was only a few minutes late and had a pretty good excuse. Of course, everybody had an excuse in college. What I really want to know is the following. Did you hear what I said as you pressed on the gas and sped away? This was my immediate instinct and the first thing that came to mind. Sorry, I called out. You're sorry, said a woman who was rushing to my side to help. I was. My predominant feeling was that I needed to apologize to you. But now I'd like to amend that.
Even though Jocelyn was my former student, I had nothing to do with the selection of this piece. I want to give a shout out to our Flash editors. One of them is here and is helping me co-host. That's Andrea Marcusa. We have Catherine Kolpa, many of you know her, who is our Flash fiction editor, and Sydney Tamarine does a lot of our Flash nonfiction editing. So we have a really wonderful staff that works so hard, and like kudos to them. I'm always like thrilled to see what they've selected. And if someone I know has been selected, that's even all the better. Next up, we have Ess Pokornowski. She's a late blooming trans, queer, and crip writer. She's published and taught about bodies, fantastic monstrosity, violence, and justice. She earned a PhD in English from UC Santa Barbara and serves as staff reader for the Adroit Journal, and lives with her partner, their pets, and gnawing anxiety, like all of us. Welcome, Ess. So good to have you.
So I'm just going to read an excerpt from the piece that I had in issue number 49, and this will just be the first section of a longer piece. So if you like it, read the whole thing. This is also one essay from a larger project that I believe, is a memoir in essays. So here we go. Which? It is Halloween night in Ypsilanti in 2020, and I am in the upstairs bathroom of our big blue farmhouse. This is the pandemic Halloween, the year we are desperate to share, to be in the world together before the cold of winter comes again. But I will remember it for something else. I've donned my black leather combat boots, borrowed a pair of tights too big for my partner A. They feel as if they were made for me. Over this, we will drape the long-sleeved, long-hooded black witch robe previously languishing in the front hall closet. Atop my head, A will place a purple-haired wig, cut in a bob, and atop that, a campy pointed witch hat. We have plucked all the pieces from the backs of closets, the bottoms of boxes, and they are here, gathered, waiting to be assembled, to assemble me. The most important step must come first, though. A is tender as she works. I wonder what thoughts tilt her smile as she applies the foundation, the blush, the eyeliner, the mascara. She's absorbed in the act, though, the making and unmaking of my face. This is her idea, and I don't think I would have participated in Halloween if she hadn't suggested it. Perhaps I would have covered myself over in robes, called it a Grim Reaper, something all tatters and bones, shrouded in a mesh so fine as to appear like shadow itself, an indecipherable signifier. Instead, the makeup falls into place, save but for the lips. She asks me to apply the inky black pencil myself. I take a deep breath and grasp the cylinder from her outstretched hand. Such a simple thing, such a complicated feeling. I make my mouth an ugly O shape, and I wipe the stick around it like I am a cartoon character, a child tracing the letter. She laughs and shakes her head. You did it just like a dude, she says, and we both laugh uneasily, wondering how I'll take it. Though I've been fragile lately, I hold it together. The makeup covering me over feels like an unveiling, the pieces threatening to fall apart hold together. Come here, let me fix it, she says, sighing. She touches up the edges. I smack my lips and thank her again. She still needs to do her own makeup, to fix her own costume. We appraise our work together, and something thrums in my chest. The dramatic sweep of the eyeliner makes my eyes look large, alien. My lips are greased black, and when I smile, my coffee yellow teeth glimmer beneath them. Still something missing, she says, scanning the Instagram posts she's used for inspiration, searching for an image that will reveal the absence she senses. Ah, she chirps, turning the phone to me. What do you want? A moon? A star? In the image, a beautiful woman a decade younger than me sports an inky black crescent moon in the center of her forehead. Yes, I cry, refusing to choose. Which do you want? I don't know. I nearly bite my lip, think better of it, and stare at the phone. The thing in my chest thrums harder. Only then do I realize it is my heart. Inspiration strikes her before frustration. What about a pentagram? Yes, I shout again then. That's it. That's the one. And it is. She takes the pencil we've used on my lips and draws a pentagram, star, then circle. First, she traces it delicately, then she runs the pencil over the lines again and again, and it becomes wild and unkempt. The tidy container in which I've stuffed my soul loosens with each circuit. When she is done, I look in the mirror and grin the widest grin I can. Unconsciously, cock my head to approximate a theatrical and monstrous femininity. I make A take a photo and stare at the image while she gets ready, scrutinizing my face. My stubble is hidden, my features blurred smooth beneath the makeup. My smile says, I am wild joy. It says, is this what you want? It says, be careful what you wish for. And then A's phone chimes to tell us M is on the way. I go stir the punch, unsettling the juice from the bottom. I pour a cup to taste. After I take a sip, the echo of my smile clings to the glass, a lingering kiss. In the downstairs bathroom, I check my makeup in the mirror, and my heart skips when I see the soft red of my lips showing through the black, like a vision or a promise. Later, in the dead of night, after we've danced around the fire in the dark, shouting playfully at trick-or-treaters, after my neighbors have mistaken me for another me, I see my face in the mirror again. For the first time I can remember, I see my own face looking back, not my eyes staring from behind the mask of my face. I realize I'm beautiful in my own way, and I cry at the intensity of my joy. I gasp and wave my hands, fanning my eyes, afraid to ruin my makeup. The absurd femininity of the gesture makes me cry harder. I realize I've never known this joy.
Thanks, and shout out to our fabulous nonfiction staff. Sydney Tamarine, some of you know her. She's our chief nonfiction editor, and we have many wonderful nonfiction readers. Next up is Gretta Trafficante. Gretta Trafficante's work has appeared or is forthcoming in Pinch, Lunch Ticket, Dribble Drabble Review, Maudlin House, Talk, Vomit, among others. Gretta is recipient of the 56th New Millennium Flash Fiction Prize and Columbia University's Brownstein Writing Award. Welcome, Gretta.
Maureen. We first formally meet playing hooky from the Gay Kickball League. Our refuge is the back nook of the only thrift shop in town to house an almost adequate selection of 2XL vintage. I'm mulling over some cow print sweats. She's toying with a bedazzled beret. We both seek the dressing room mirror's counsel and find the other's disapproval glaring back. You're not having a serious allergic reaction, she says. You're not out searching for your lost cat, I reply. We clutch our prospective purchases, the racks of musty polyester shrouding our accusations from potential onlookers. You play third base, I say. You play right center, she replies. You're millennial. You're cusp at best. You're a blog writer in this economy. You're a grad student in this economy. You always post about your stamp collection. You always like my posts. I learn a lot skipping kickball games. Her name is Maureen. Being what's left after glaciers, she's naturally more nervous of warm climates than most. She is happiest when the weather grows bitter and the days grow desperate to sleep. In my wildest fantasies, she tells me the second time we meet back at my place, I moved to Greenland and I finally buy an ice-covered bear stamp. You mean Iceland, right? I ask, where there's more people and not just ice sheets? No, I mean Greenland, she says and smiles. Few people, much ice sheet. She prefers aesthetics over sentimentality. She eyes the walls of my apartment with the same scrutiny she applies to thrifted headwear, inspecting the picture frames and ignoring their contents. She must approve of my choice in exteriority, because she stays long enough to invite me over to hers for a next time. Over many next times, I learn Maureen takes great pride in being full enough for her cats to comfortably lounge on, and that her cats take great pride in being able to outrun strangers. Eventually, I become less of a stranger, and they become less committed to their outmaneuvering. We learn to lie to our kickball team together. On weeks we are lazy, a cat or two goes missing again. On weeks where inspiration strikes, we're stuck in traffic behind some indie director's guerrilla film shoot on Route 696. You'd think the group chat would stop entertaining our pathology at some point, but just the other day, someone replied to ask if the director was famous. The season eventually ends, and we realize it 3 days later when the coach uploads tournament photos to the group chat. Huh, I say, scrolling through images of somewhat familiar, sweaty people holding a plastic trophy. I guess we came in third. We can't count ourselves in that victory, Maureen says. They came in third. We don't even qualify for the participation trophy. Maureen is very reasonable this way. When I'm next thrift shopping, I find myself picking out clothes in the color Maureen's palms, desperate for some semblance of her touch when she's not around. That night in bed, I tell her this, my face warm, a symptom of vulnerability that's been all too chronic since we first caught each other. In my wildest fantasies, she says after a moment, we move to Greenland, and I finally buy the ice-covered bear stamp, and then we get another cat. I still think the cats would hate ice sheets, I say, and kiss her unflushed cheek. We compromise and move to Iceland. Maureen loves the winds that cut when you stand too close to the bay. I myself prefer the hot springs. Temperature never was something we could agree on, but we keep trying. For her 5th anniversary, I get her a stamp of the Blue Lagoon, and she gives me a trip to the Swedish Ice Hotel. After much self-reflection, we opt not to sign up for another gay kickball league. This is mainly because the sport seems less popular amongst Nordic gays, but also because we're growing older and more prone to guilty consciences. It takes some time to adjust. The cats to the fresh air, Maureen and I to the newfound honesty of our lives. But soon, we all find ourselves home.
Next up, we have Robyn Wheelock. And Robyn's piece was one of the semifinalists for our nonfiction contest last year. Robyn Wheelock was born and raised in Central Oklahoma. After graduating from Trinity University in San Antonio, Texas, she worked as a production assistant on film and television projects and as a youth instructor at the Southwest School of Art. Robyn moved to Philadelphia with her partner James in 2021 and feels humbled and thrilled to be part of a vibrant community of creators here in Philly. Robyn's visual art has been displayed at Movement Callow Hill, Information Space Gallery, and a private gallery show in Center City, Philadelphia. This essay poem is her first published work. So congratulations, Robyn, and welcome.
I'm reading an abbreviated version of my nonfiction poem, The Life and Death of Elsie May, which I wrote following the death of my grandmother and submitted to y'all about this time last year. So here I go. We spin a lot of yarns as human beings. We like to tell stories, from fish tales to nativity pageants to letting my grandmother believe that I attend church. And once upon a time, in a faraway land, there was a man in love with a princess. They were betrothed to be married, but then, on the day of the wedding, the princess was kidnapped by a great giant. No, a lawyer. No, a troll. The troll wrapped his fingers around the princess's dainty ribs and carried her off to a tower. No, to tie her to the railroad tracks. No, to a cave just south of Texarkana. Elsie May sits with me in her living room and tells me a story. She says, when I was 17, I graduated high school and got married that same week to an older man. And 1 week after, I went to my father and I told him, Papa, I have made a big mistake. I'm sorry to hear that, he told me. So Elsie May bore the older man's fits. She bore his lashes. She bore him 4 children. And she prayed and she cooked and she studied and she gardened and she painted and she mothered and she prayed. And one day, after her children all were grown and she'd spent 44 years praying about it, she determined it wasn't actually God's plan for her to be abused for the rest of her life by her husband. So she called a friend and she packed her bags to leave and she got a divorce. I am 9 and Elsie's garden is a jungle. Jade green spiders weave curtains above the zinnias and roses. I crouch with frogs beneath the elephant ears and watch moths flock to the moonflowers after sunset. Now I'm almost 30 and I pull tomato vines like crepe paper, dead since last December, to expose the good, dark soil underneath. Elsie May is not afraid of death. 10 years ago, she took me to see the headstones and burial plots that she and my grandpa had selected for themselves and had already bought and paid for. So y'all don't have to worry about it when we go to meet the Lord. Once upon a time, when hogs smoked tobacco, an old woman fell and broke her hip. And her son decided she should come live with him while she recovered. So he wrapped his fingers around her brittle bones and carried her off to an uncharted island. No, to a secret bunker. No, to a smoke-stale house in Palestine, Texas, far from her one true love and husband of over 20 years. I don't know how to write about my grandmother losing her memories, losing her will, losing her confidence in my own mind. My grandfather weeping and grieving a wife who hasn't even died. The half-mortal son of a troll isn't concerned about the sanctity of his mother's marriage or her dying wishes. He keeps her in a room with no toilet and puts her to bed at 3. He is his father's son. Perhaps my grandfather mounts a horse and rides bareback to Central Texas, guns a-blazing. He tosses Elsie over his shoulder and come hell or high water, he takes her home. But perhaps he doesn't. Perhaps Elsie spent her final days in a long-distance relationship with her husband of 24 years because her troll, no, mortal, no, ogre, son, didn't care what she wanted as long as he could make sure that she died at his house. Maybe Elsie died lonely in that stuffy bedroom and the ogre won. Sometimes the ogre wins. The magnolias are blossoming in Fairmount. I walk with my best friend and tell them I want to put a curse on the ogre, and they remind me that such things are better left to karma. I attempt to perform a loving kindness meditation for the ogre. I spit up snakes and frogs and roaches and mice. I trip and skin the palms of my hands. but at least I don't curse him. Maybe it doesn't matter where Elsie drew her final breath, or with whom. Wherever she was, a dove arrived at her window, and she arose with restored mobility and balance, and hoisted herself with grace out of her room and into the hand of God. Perhaps Charles William made it to the ogre's lair on Elsie's last day just in time to hold her hand and sing the Gospel Boogie by Johnny Cash one last time. And maybe she even knew he was there. It is spring now. I plant tomatoes, okra, and moonflowers in my yard. An emerald green spider looms in the branches overhead. Perhaps Elsie May can see me through the arachnid's fractal eyes, or perhaps the spider is simply weaving and waiting for mosquitoes lured westward by the sunset to catch in the curtains of her humble home and stick and stay and nourish her. When the tomatoes grow big and green like the spider, I will pluck them and slice them thick. I will cook them in bacon fat in a cast iron skillet, and on the handle I will hold the crocheted pot holder that Elsie gave me over a decade ago. And with that pot holder in my hand, I can hold a skillet over any cooking fire, any house or forest fire, no matter how wild, and never, never be burned.
Next up is Matt Thomas. Matt Thomas is a smallholder farmer, engineer, and poet. His recent work can be found in Ponder Review, The Thieving Magpie, and Common House. Disappearing by the Math, a full-length collection, was published by Silver Bow in 2024. He lives with his family in the Blue Ridge Mountains of Virginia. Visit Matt Thomas at his website or at Matt Thomas Poetry on Threads. Welcome, Matt.
The poem that I'm going to read is called Epiphany. Those times the light is uncertain, forgets to lick and mother. The shapes of the world, usually homogeneous, become brittle and braille, sparking in sharp little barks. A fluorescent second in the grocery store, maybe, looking up from my phone and seeing you, hair like a curtain, behind which you are examining the contents of a yogurt freezer, etched in ozone, up the nose, on the backs of my eyes, who you are and what you want. A discerning instant before the relief of you retreats by quick, familiar degrees. I remember to forget, to the barest dimensions of distant home that I follow behind and out of the way, with dissipating scratch of you, like that of a raspberry briar, on the back of my hand, long after I part it, or the air fretting passage of a bird.
Next up is John Calderazzo. John's work has appeared in Audubon, Brevity, Georgia Review, Orion, Terrain.org, Best American Nature Writing, Best Travel Adventure Stories, and Copper Canyon Press's Here, Poems for the Planet. His first collection is The Exact Weight of the Soul by Red Mountain Press in 2020. His second, In the Soup, is forthcoming from Middle Creek Press. His 4 nonfiction books include Rising Fire, Volcanoes and Our Inner Lives. He is an English professor emeritus at Colorado State University and has won Best CSU Teacher Award. Nowadays, he teaches scientists storytelling skills to communicate with the public. Welcome, John.
Poetry's been my second writing career in retirement, and it's been a total blast. It's been really fun to read around with old poems, old poets that I knew a long time ago and maybe forgot about, and then all kinds of new poems. So it's been great. I'm going to read my poem called Good Manners, and we have a 1-year-old walking around the house, so you may hear her scream a little bit, happily, I hope. Good Manners. Mount Alice Trail, Seward. Just off the road, I shoulder through bushes and enter a huge, dank cave of trees, mushroom bursts, mossy yews, spars bent like dancers holding poses on an unlit stage. The path is so steep in places I pull myself up by roots thick as fire hoses. 2 days of car rattle from Fairbanks make me climb fast. shaking off the highway, sucking in the piney air, the submarine breath of the rainforest. I hear laughing uphill and see 3 young women switchbacking through the trees in bathing suits and flip-flops, towels draped over their broad shoulders. They look strong enough to have dolphined across the bay from town. In my teaching days, I loved to watch women on campus skateboarding by, hair flying as they chatted so casually on a phone or nodded to earbuds. I love how my wife, with an inch of height on me, never ducks when we enter a room. I try to hang back, but they keep stopping. They yak and laugh and seize each other's arms and shoulders. My legs have to move, so I decide to just nod and speed on by. But when I draw close, they look me over, my wire gray beard, and one says, "Well, look who's not even breathing hard." We all laugh. An hour on, their voices eaten by the forest, I break into a flower meadow, Resurrection Bay, far below, a chunk of turquoise set among snow peaks. A day-warmed boulder fits itself to me as I lean back and close my eyes, imagining the long blue valves of humpbacks pushing under the bay. On my way down, I glimpse, in mid-distance, the women, naked in a meadow, sauntering in the power and glory of their bodies. I doubt they care that I pause for a second before I move on.
Vicki Mayk is a writer, editor, and teacher whose work has appeared in the Brevity blog, Hippocampus, Literary Mama, The Manifestation, Bending Genres, Emerge magazine, the anthology Air, and others. Her narrative nonfiction book, Growing Up on the Gridiron, Football, Friendship, and the Tragic Life of Owen Thomas was published by Beacon Press. She earned her MFA in nonfiction from the Maslow Family Graduate Program in Creative Writing at Wilkes University and teaches adult fiction workshops. Catch up with Vicki Mayk on Instagram at Vicki Mayk or at her website. Welcome, Vicki.
The piece I'm going to share tonight had its beginnings in a workshop with the wonderful Beth Kephart, who I know is part of the Cleaver family. And so shout out to Beth for the inspiration. What I wanted to say when you asked me why I live in an old factory. Because my father grew up in a Pittsburgh house surrounded by warehouses near a river. Because his father was an alcoholic. Because they kept a black dog who barked viciously, chained out in the yard. Because my father and his brothers left that house to serve in World War II. Because after the war, my father loved to gamble and go to nightclubs. Because one night my mother came into one of his haunts. Because my dad asked, "Who's the girl in the hat?" And the bartender told him to leave her alone. She's a nice girl. Because my dad walked miles from the house by the warehouses in the 1950 blizzard to woo her at her parents' wonderful old house. Because on her wedding day, my mother learned my father's real last name. Because on that same day, he took her to the house surrounded by warehouses, past the dog chained in the yard, to meet his mother who barely spoke English. Because we lived in a third-floor apartment in my mother's parents' house until I was in the 4th grade. Because I could smell my grandmother's spaghetti sauce every day in that apartment. Because I loved that smell, that house, those people. Because in 1965, my father's family still lived in the house by the warehouses and cooked on a wood-burning stove. Because I was mesmerized watching my Aunt Ida stoke that stove. Because Aunt Ida hid notebooks in a special compartment under the kitchen table, magically producing them when strange people came to the house. Because she wrote numbers in the notebooks after the people gave her money. Because once she thought she saw police coming and threw the notebooks in the stove. Because when I was 9, my parents bought a big brand new house in the suburbs. Because my father believed the new house meant he'd finally left behind the house by the warehouses. Because I felt like my childhood ended when we moved to that house. because living with my Italian grandparents felt more like home, because I never told my father that I felt that way, because when I left for college, I never really lived with my parents again, because I spent my 20s living in too many places for too short a time, because the 2 houses I owned with my ex-husband felt like prisons, because I still search family photos, trying to remember what my Italian grandparents' house looked like, because I keep searching for the feeling I had when I lived there. Because after my divorce, home was 1 room, then 5 rooms. Because now I've learned you can make a home in an apartment, in an old factory building, surrounded by warehouses near a river.
Next up, we have Lisa Buchanan. So Lisa's piece is also one of the semifinalists from our recent competition. Her creative nonfiction can be found in the Citron Review, the Ekphrastic Review, and Sugar, Sugar, Salt. Her piece, One of Us and the Other, in the New Ohio Review, was named a notable in Best American Essays 2023. Welcome, Lisa.
Thank you, Coco Chanel. Nobody had to tell us it was healthy. We were teenage TV watchers, California girls up on the latest. Margarine instead of butter, baby powder for hygiene, light cigarettes. A suntan meant we'd had weekend plans beyond shoplifting at the mall or eyedroppering milk into our belly buttons to attract the cat's rough tongue. It meant we could justify the purchase of white shorts and pose in a classroom doorway, a bronze statue late to Western civilization. It spared us the embarrassment of seeming studious. Reading happened on a beach towel next to a radio. Body surfing was the perfect exercise, the waves doing all the work. Our job was to slather and bake. We couldn't make ourselves taller or more important, but we could wear frosted lipstick and darken our skin. We could offer up our beating hearts to the sun. We could swoon to the sounds of the surf. We could burrow into warm sand and be held. On family vacations, dads wore fishing hats and peeled easily. Moms in moo-moos sipped drinks under poolside umbrellas. We, however, were determined to return with at least a sunburn, the heat of rare steak inviting cool fingertips to sample us. To aloof surfers and garage party drummers, we'd prove ourselves mellow, laid back, heedless of time, not uptight like our mothers. We knew nothing of Coco Chanel's historic outdoor nap. We'd never heard of sunscreen. Ultraviolet was a nail polish. Cell Division was a goth band somewhere. We did not know the meaning of melanin. The meaning of melanin. The alliteration alone would have had us giggle shrieking for hours. How would the Snack Shack's cranky cashier say it? Our fashion model camp counselor? Our prehistoric school nurse? Nobody spoke of danger. And yet, a half century later, a select few of us would receive a cosmic memento. A solar eclipse would appear on a shoulder or thigh, maybe the scalp. Then, from the black holes of our viscera, a few faint but fearsome stars would emerge, radiant against the night sky. A shimmer in a lymph node, a tiny bright sun in a cerebral hemisphere. Cluster would become supercluster, would become a universe expanding within us, birthing beasts and virgins and ancient heroes. In the end, wholly luminescent, we'd miss our pale, uptight parents. Soon, we'd join them, light years away, suspended in space, elemental once again with a life expectancy in the billions.
Next up, we have Sarah Baldwin. Sarah C. Baldwin is a Rhode Island-based writer whose work has appeared in Salon, Pangyris, In Short, The Rumpus, Oxmag, Autofocus, and elsewhere, as well as in numerous university magazines. 2 of her essays have been nominated for a Pushcart Prize, and her articles have received recognition from the Council for Advancement and Support of Education and the Association of American Medical Colleges. Links to her work can be found at sarahcbaldwin.com. Welcome, Sarah.
My piece is called Pietà. I wanted to be thin, thin like Arlene. College food and a middle-class life had left me doughy, but decades had whittled her into something edgy and lean. A slash of charcoal, a licorice Twizzler, black turtleneck, black polyester pants, black hair hanging straight between her bony shoulders. Skin the color of skim-milked coffee, cheekbones like fossils in a dried riverbed. The strings of the black pouch where she kept her waitressing tips had to orbit her waist several times before being short enough to tie. Only her shoes were heavy, black, thick-soled, manly. Unlike me, she wasn't scared of the cook, a scrawny marionette jumpy from Coke, Adam's apple bopping as he flipped steaks and flung profanities. She was tough, scolding me after a man came to the register and said, "Give me 2 20s for a 10," and I did before realizing what I'd done. And she was kind, helping me with my tables when I got behind, whispering, "I'll water your customers, you get their food." She lived on cigarettes and tab, out of poverty, I think, and an indifference to eating that I envied. Then one night after closing, she crumpled, weeping, and I found myself sitting on the curb, holding the husk of her across my lap. Every wail seemed to leave her lighter. I was unforgivably young. I did not understand that a woman like Erlene could have her heart broken. I whispered consolations, but even holding her, I craved her thinness, ached for it, would have stolen it if I could, because I somehow knew my life was too soft to chisel me into anything so slender, anything so sharp.
Welcome, Andrea. Andrea Bishop lives in British Columbia, Canada. Her flash and short stories appear in the Masters Review, Gain, Tramp Set, and elsewhere. Andrea Bishop is a morning person who has a deep respect for spreadsheets, forests, dogs, and quests. She welcomes visitors at andreabishop.ca and dialogue on Twitter at @_Andrea Bishop. Welcome, Andrea.
This is a piece of flash fiction. Working with blanks. My husband says, if you're going to have to kill something, it's best to practice beforehand. I say, I don't think I will. I have you. And if I'm not here to keep you safe, let's face it, I say, if you're gone, I'm toast. Normally, he would smile, but today this irritates him. Today, he's sure something is coming for us. Today, we're not playing around. I say, remember when the dashboard burst into flames and I didn't even pull over? I just stopped and ran off. I knew you'd look after it. Of course he remembers. That was 21 years ago. We laugh, jokes upon jokes, layers upon layers. There are 10 acres between us and our nearest neighbors. Too far for anyone to mind our business. Relatives ask, how do you manage out there, just you two and the dogs? Don't you get lonely? We're amused they missed the point. He says, what if an intruder holds me at gunpoint and you have to shoot them to save me? He notes my alarm and adds, let's make this easier. What if a zombie holds me at gunpoint? I give him the side eye. What if all it takes to scare a zombie is to shoot a blank in his direction? So we work with zombies, we work with blanks, we work with close enough. He is fearful, I can tell, but doesn't say what's coming for us. I don't think he knows what's coming for us. We agree that lately there have been fires, floods, people acting strangely. We used to say, you can't prepare for every outcome. You need to react in the moment. Now that we're older, we know it's better to think ahead. He teaches me how to split and stack firewood. He's rigged a system with a ramp and the wheelbarrow so I can maneuver rounds into the splitter. He's cut enough rounds to last a lifetime. Before, learning these chores seemed like a waste of time because he's stronger. He can do it faster. We put our 2 dogs inside and he hands me the bow. He places a target in the woods. I stand next to the dwarf Japanese maple I planted 30 years ago for the cheer its red bark brings on a dark winter night. It's diseased now. The structure is sturdy, still beautiful in its gnarly old way, but the previously vibrant leaves are sparse. They dropped early and won't regenerate. I've been trying everything to save it. He says, an arrow is a silent weapon. They won't know it's coming. I ask, they? He looks confused, looks at me with the bow, looks at the target, tries to put the situation into a meaningful context. Finally, I say, the zombies? And he smiles and nods. I don't have the strength for this. I can't even draw the arrow back from the bow. I say, I'm famished. Could we take a break? He used to be the kind of guy who could go a whole day without getting hungry, but today he forgot and ate 2 breakfasts in a row. My husband wants me to learn the gun, even though black bears in our apple tree vamoose with just a broom and a shout. We have no grizzlies. Cougars are run off by the dogs, who stick together for protection. He loads the rifle with real bullets. Even though we're 10 acres from the nearest neighbors, discharging firearms is prohibited at this time of year. He's always been about safety first, but now he takes aim up the driveway. Something is coming for us. I say, remember yesterday we agreed we'd lock the guns away? He looks at me blankly. I say, I think the zombies are gone now. He looks at me oddly. I say, I think we'll be okay now. Give me the gun. But he won't. I need to go inside and make the phone call. It's time. I say, they're going to be coming for us, and I might need that gun to protect myself. So he hands it to me.
All the pieces that we heard tonight are so powerful, and as well, the other pieces in the issue. So I really thank you all for trusting us with your work and thinking of Cleaver to steward your work. Also, I don't know if you know this, but I have the privilege of designing the artwork for each of these pieces, and each of them is a sort of interesting and fun challenge. So, and we try to keep a color palette for each issue. So doing that and has me reading the stories in a different way or the poems each time, and then hearing them in your voices brings yet another layer to them that is just such a wonderful privilege to hear. So thank you all for participating. We hope to hear from you and your work again soon, and do consider submitting a writing tip to Layla, who's our editor of our newsletter, because that gets a lot of attention from our mailing list, and it's great to have that sort of community involvement. And I want to give a special shout out to Andrea Marcusa, who served as my impromptu co-host. Thank you, Andrea. She's one of our Flash editors, and we appreciate you so much. Thank you again, everybody, and see you soon. Bye-bye.